Check 1, 2 on the mic. Hello, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes we are all treaty people. So today we've got a full house. We have regrets from Councillor Lovelace, and I will now step down, or sorry, Cuddle. Sorry, I had the wrong note there. Councillor Lovelace is here. Councillor Cuddle is not. Also, Purdy, Outlet, and Cleary. And we're joined by Councillor Stoddart. We have the election for chair, and I will step down from the chair position, and the legislative assistant will run the election of the chair.
All right, we will now start or conduct the election of chair. And I will open the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the Transportation Standing Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I would like to nominate Pam Lovelace for chair.
And do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second it for the art.
Okay, moved by Purdy, seconded by Mason. All right, I will call for further nominations. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate our just going chair, Wei Mason.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that for the sake of. We'll give it to Trish.
But, okay, who do we want to second it? Lovelace? Okay. So, all right, I will call again for nominations for the position of chair. I will call a second time.
I hit, but it didn't come up or something. Yeah, it's, Sean, are you interested in being nominated? Not interested, okay, all right.
No, I'm interested, but not interested. No, I'm not interested. All right.
All right, I will call once more for the chair, nominations for chair. I'll call a second time, and I will call a third and final time. All right, so where we have two nominees, are both nominees accepting of the nomination? Okay, we will go to ballots. I will hand out the ballots. Each member will write their candidate of choice on the ballots. I will collect them and I will bring them over to the solicitor.
With 3 votes to 2, sorry? Sorry,
Just say who the successful nominee
too
is.
late. The chair shall be Pam Lovelace.
So that is the successful nominee, and we will call for the question that Councillor Lovelace be nominated chair of the Transportation Standing Committee. Question. And all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say nay. Okay, I'm not hearing any nays, that motion passes. And now we will move on for a motion to appoint Councillor Lovelace, Chair of the Transportation Standing Committee. No, that was the... Okay, okay. All right, so we are declaring Councillor Lovelace the Chair of the Transportation Standing Committee, and you can now assume the role of the chair.
Thank you, colleagues, and I want to say thank you very much to Councillor Mason for leading this committee for the last 3 years. Really appreciate your work on that. We are going to move forward with our, an annotated agenda right here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to move forward with a call for nominations for Vice Chair. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Mason for a very hands-on vice chair.
Seconded
You reap
by
what you sow.
Councillor Cleary. And Councillor Purdy, do you accept that? I do. Thank you. I will ask again for any other nominations for vice chair. I will ask again for a third time. Any nominations for vice chair? It appears that we are, I have a list. Thank you. It appears that we have, vice chair has been acclaimed, so there is no vote on that. So,
So Lovelace is the successful nominee, but I believe we still have a motion to appoint Vice Chair of the Transportation Standing Committee, so we will need a mover and a seconder for that.
right, so Purdy is the successful
Correct.
nominee, yes.
Sorry, did I say Lovelace? I meant,
No worries.
Purdy.
So we will need a motion. Moved by Councillor Cleary, seconded by
Sure.
Councillor Mason. Thank you. I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. And that motion is successful. So that has passed. Congratulations, Councillor Cleary as Vice Chair. Wonderful. So we have done that. Sorry, pardon? What did I just say? I tell ya. Thank you so much. Moving on now to the approval of minutes for October 26, 2023. Thank you. Motion to accept those minutes. Any issues with the minutes at all? Do I have a seconder? I think I saw a wave over there from Cleary. Yes, thank you, Councillor Cleary. Call for the question. Question, thank you. All in favor? All opposed? We have minutes. Okay, next we have approval of the order of business, approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, do you have anything for us?
there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Thank you. I'll call for a motion then to approve the order of business as presented. Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Seconder? I need a seconder, please, for the order of business. Thank you, Councillor Mason. And call for the question. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, nay. That motion has carried. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. We do have Councillor Cleary who has left the room. Is that an issue, Madam Clerk during the call for conflicts of interest?
We can wait till he comes back to see if there are any conflict of interest, but we can go forward in the meantime.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to motions of reconsideration, none. Motions of rescission, none. Consideration deferred business, none. Notices of tables matters, none. We'll come back to item 5 when Councillor Cleary returns. Correspondence, item 10, Madam Clerk.
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. Councillors, any petition? Any petitions at all? Okay. Clerks, do we?
No petitions have been
petitions.
received by the clerk's office.
Excellent. Well, I am very pleased then to move to 10.3, presentations by Bay Rides, delivery challenges in rural transportation services with Megan and Megan. Would you like to step up, please? And then you just hit the button, and it's going to turn red. Yeah. That's right.
Perfect. So I want to say initially a big thank you to the committee for allowing us to present here today. And a quick introduction, I'm Megan Marr, the chair of Bay Rides, with Megan Harris, who is one of our board of directors. Megan and I both serve in voluntary capacity on behalf of Bay Rides, and we're very proud to be here today representing the team at Bay Rides, and specifically our subcommittee, who has been working so diligently on this initiative over the last little while. So we're going to start here today by telling you a story about a family in St. Margaret's Bay. So there's a wife, a husband, 2 sons. The sons are in their 30s, and they live at home because they are autistic. The parents rely on Bay Rides to take one of the sons to his medical appointments and also to his part-time work. And here's what their mother had to say about our service. Bay Rides makes my son feel like he's part of the community, and for him, Bay Rides means inclusion. And another client's point of view. Without Bay Rides, I wouldn't be able to work, and it's as simple as that. So we're here today to tell you that the service these people rely on is in jeopardy without your help. But what we're talking about today is not just a Bay Rides problem. We're here in partnership with the 3 other community transportation operators who benefit from funding from the HRM. So both of the Musco Rider operations and the East Hants Community Rider. Combined, we service thousands of kilometers each month, getting people to doctors, dentists, hospitals, shops, food banks, social activities, and their work. And we are all caught in the same economic trap, squeezed between rising costs and static funding. Our fuel costs are 60% higher today than they were when the funding was first established. Maintenance costs are up, insurance is up, drivers' wages are up, and our subsidized funding has not changed in some time. We know that the HRM appreciates the service that Bay Rides and other CTOs provide because you give us 50 cents for every kilometer driven, and that funding is invaluable to us. The only source of revenue that we can control is from our fares. We could increase our fares, but that would come with a very terrible social price at this time. Ironically, this year our ridership is up, but our fare revenue is not. So why is that? Because more of the people turning to Bay Rides are in crisis. They're the working poor, making tough choices between rent, food, medical appointments, and transportation. They're asking for our help from our fare assistance program, and we're giving them that assistance. So the request for rides is up, but revenue from rides is not. And we know that the demand is going to increase. The biggest challenge faced by people, according to the Joint Regional Transportation Agency survey, includes the absence and cost of public transit and the increasing unaffordability of owning a personal vehicle. Our service is giving people an option, and we are filling the public transportation void in rural areas that cannot be provided by the HRM or the province. We know that having public transportation is essential for our healthy community. 1 in 2 Canadians say the lack of transportation is a barrier to accessing healthcare. Low-income Canadians are more likely to report unmet healthcare needs due to the cost of transportation. Without our service, seniors find it difficult to get quality groceries and their nutrition suffers. All of this leads to, without accessible transportation, the community suffers and the consequences fall on an already overburdened healthcare system. Regarding seniors specifically, our service plays a major role in extending the independence, improving the health, and reducing social isolation of this large and growing sector of our population. Our friends at the St. Margaret's Bay Seniors Association asked us to share their perspective. The quote is, "The transportation provided by Bay Rides plays an essential role in helping us to ensure that we are accessible to those Bay seniors who need us most. So we make it easier for people to face the enormous decision to stop driving. It's a very tough call. If you live in a rural community, if that's your home and you want to remain there, you need accessible, affordable transportation. But you may not be aware that the largest percentage of Bay Rides clients actually use our service to get to work. 56% of our clients use us for work either in the community or we connect them to the Metro X. For many, a personal vehicle is no longer an option and they are dependent on us. I'll transition here to our finances, so I'm going to just go over a few numbers. 54% of our annual costs are directly related to keeping our vehicles on the road. Our fare revenue accounts for only 20% of our revenues. Government-based funding accounts for 54% of our revenues, and the remaining 26% comes from fundraising and donations. And costs are rising. Municipal and provincial funding has been static for many years. Fare revenue is flat or falling. As inflation hits our clients, they need us to subsidize their fares. And income from fundraising is declining because everybody is asking for the same funds. So what are we, Bay Rides, doing about our financial position? We have engaged everyone within our organization in a complete review of our operations. If there are viable ways of reducing our operating costs, we will look at them, but there's just not a lot of fat to be trimmed. And so my ask to you, my appeal to the Transportation Standing Committee and through you to the HRM City Council, you more than anyone know the importance of affordable, reliable transportation. If you live in an urban area, you are lucky. The transit is likely on your doorstep. But for the 18,000 people living in St. Margaret's Bay, it's not that easy. If they choose not to drive, or they can't afford to drive, or they're physically unable to drive, Bay Rides is their lifeline. We're working with a funding formula that was created at the birth of the Rural Transportation Association in Nova Scotia. But a lot has changed since then. In 2019, we made 11,000 trips and traveled 200,000 kilometers. And then COVID changed everything. Then inflation, some global conflict pushed up our costs, particularly on our fuel costs. Last year, we made 6,000 trips and traveled 150,000 kilometers. So we were recovering from COVID and then hit again with inflation. We are here asking for support for an increase in the existing model. We would like to see an increase in the base funding from 10,000 to 25,000, and we're asking for an increase in the cents per kilometer rate from 50 cents to 62 cents. Let's work together to create a funding model that meets the needs of HRM and your rural transportation partners for the next decade. And we all know this is about so much more than transportation. We're safeguarding people's health. We're giving people the dignity of getting to work even when they struggle to pay their fare. We're enabling people to age in place, and we're making sure our neighbors don't go without, even when they're not able to go to the grocery store or pick up their own prescriptions. We're the community service that says if you can't get to the food bank, we'll bring the food bank to you. Please support us as we request this urgent review of the funding formula. This change will ensure the future of the service, the social service, as well as the transportation service. I'd like to end by reading a letter to you. My name is Zan, and I'm 33 years old from Tantallon with autism. I've used the Bay Ride service for a few years now, and I've relied on them for help in transportation because I can't drive myself due to having autism and anxiety that prevents me from being a safe driver. If it weren't for them, I don't know how I would be able to leave my home to go to places like the gym, grocery shopping for myself, or be able to have a working job in the area. Please continue to support Bay Rides in the future so that people like me can have the ability to go anywhere in the long foreseeable future. Helping people like Zan is our mission. Please help us to help our communities get through these hard economic times, to allow our neighbors and friends to fulfill their potential, live with dignity, and continue to live in the area that they love to call home. Thank you again for allowing us to present on this important issue impacting so many residents of the HRM, and we certainly welcome any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Really appreciate that. There are a few questions on the board, so we'll get you to hang tight. Councillor Outhet, up to you first.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the work you do. Just a couple of questions, just to help set the stage. So first of all, I think the fact that you're here and asking for this at a time when we have seen increased costs that you mentioned, fuel, wages, insurances, all that, I think that's completely reasonable, and certainly I, off the top of my head, would think an increase is quite a reasonable request. Are you approaching the province as well, and how much more are you looking for from them?
We are approaching the province. We are approaching the province, and we've had initial conversations. We have a meeting actually scheduled on Monday, and we're going to look at a few different avenues with them, but historically the province provides, well, I'll let Megan speak to this in more detail. You'll have to turn on your mic. I brought Megan because she actually can answer the hard questions.
The money person?
Somewhat. So the province provides us about $57,000. So yes, they'll be approached, but we're looking at it as a multifaceted approach, both from HRM, the province, continuing with our grant writing, our donation campaign on a quarterly basis, as well as potentially evaluating in some capacity our fare revenue or fare structure.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So I'm very supportive of you being here for your ask. I hope the province will be very helpful for you as well, because I believe that they're in a little bit better financial shape than we are right now, first of all. And secondly, I think they are starting to expand similar services to other areas. So they must believe in and support it. I think I've seen some announcements in the South Shore or down Cape Breton, or there was something where I thought maybe they were getting more into this. So I hope that's correct. For those who can afford to pay a little more, you're going to need a little more provincial money. You're going to need some more municipal money. You're going to have to be saying you're doing an examination of your internal costs and whatnot. But there are those who, compared to running a car, are saving a lot of money, and some might be in a little bit of ability to share. Maybe not the people you've referenced and wrote to us, but you'll be looking at that option as well, because it's going to take sort of 3 or 4 different ways to help you through, because I want you to be successful, obviously.
Yes, that's correct. So we do have some clients that are able to pay,
Right.
but a majority of our clients
Okay.
are predominantly in the vulnerable sectors, on seniors.
All right, I'll see where my colleagues speak on this, and then I don't know, Madam Chair, because it's her district, I don't know if you're looking for a motion or if you're looking for a staff report, or you're bringing it forward a budget, or what your plan is. But I think you'll find some support around this table, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Outhet. Yes, on a future day. Over to you, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you very much. So I don't have a CTO in my district, but so I'm not as up to speed on the actual mechanics of the math. Is there a cap on the 50 cents per kilometer? Is there a cap on that? So if you were doing 150 kilometers last year and 6,000 rides, so that would be to go from 50 to 62 cents, 12 cents delta, $18,000 in extra funding based on that. And if we did go from 10 to 25, then that's an extra 15. So that's an extra 33,000 for Bay Rides. And I don't remember now, you guys are you as big as Musco? Who's bigger in terms of the Musco? Okay. And they've got the 2.
Musco would be larger.
Yeah.
Double our size.
Yeah.
I think in aggregate, when I looked at the ask versus the prior year's mileage, incrementally it would be about mid-30,000 dollars.
For both the
For
per
all
kilometer and the base?
For-
Yeah, because there's
for
only
all
like 4 or 5 CTOs, right? 4.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds pretty reasonable. So, I mean, I think that kind of thing would be supported by the committee to move forward a budget to look at that. It is a pretty modest ask, and what you do is a valuable service in the rural communities, probably increasingly so, not just based on, the anecdotes that you brought forward today, but just when you think about the number of folks who are moving, I mean, urbanization is still happening in Nova Scotia. We're one of the most rural provinces still. And so there's still more people moving to the city, and the folks, I'm imagining, who are still staying out in these rural areas are even more marginalized because those with means would be moving further in. Is that, yeah, I see head nodding, okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation and for the work that you do. Totally in agreement that this needs to be moved forward to budget, but my question actually was for Mr. Reggae here. Reggae. So, because this comes forward every budget when we're looking at funding, has the formula already been kind of rejigged for all of the inflation and the gas tax increase and everything? Or should we make a motion for this moving forward into budget?
Through the chair, Dave Reedy, Executive Director, Halifax Transit, there's really two pieces to it. So the way the structure of the funding is set out is actually within an admin order, so that would have to be amended. That lays out what's the flat rate, what's the per kilometer charge and all that. So that's the first piece. When we come forward to council, we are taking that admin order, the numbers in that admin order, and basically taking the estimates we get from the community transit operators of what they expect to run for kilometers, and then we basically do the math, and that's what ends up in budget. So it really is a two-step. If council wished to amend the way the program works, it would be a two-step process to change the admin order first, and then obviously changing the budget to go with that. And we bring forward a budget number every year based on the existing admin order, and again, the estimates that we get from the operators of the kilometers they expect to run.
So, okay, so just a question on that then. So with the ask from Bay Rides here today, and that they've given the ask, what they need, you're saying that we would need to ask for an adjustment to the admin order in order for this to be given to them? So can I make that motion then to ask for that adjustment to the admin order?
So I think at this point, it would be next meeting that would come forward. I do appreciate your passion for this and excitement for this. At this point, we do still have a couple of other speakers on the floor here, and just wondering if you have questions for our presenters.
But, no, just thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly do everything we can to help you get this.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to be clear, so we haven't seen a dollar increase in this in how long? Like 2 decades? Your mic. We want it for the record, so we want the mic on. There you go.
My understanding is, I think it was 2014-15, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I think when this comes back, then we need to consider the fleet fuel cost adjustment we do every year for fleet and for transit, and mirror that, because obviously sometimes it goes up. It might go down, seems really unlikely, but that's where we're at. And operating costs have gone up too, and so we reflect that in our budget and other parts that have to do with transportation, so it seems reasonable to me. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Councillor. And we have Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. My question is, I believe Bay Rides does extend into District 12, which would be Lakeside, Timberley, Beachville. No?
Our catchment area, I'm still green here, there we go. Our catchment area extends to the Hubli exit from the Tantallon direction towards Timberley Lakeside, but that's as far as we would go, yeah.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. If you would, Megan, just explain where your catchment is, that might be helpful for all of us.
Oh, sorry. We cover from Yankeetown Road, just off Hammonds Plains, through to the Hubbards area, Fox Point Road, down to Peggy's Cove, and then, as Megan alluded to, so exit 4, there's a actually a Metro X station there, and that's essentially kind of the perimeters. That's helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan and Megan. Really appreciate you being here today. Appreciate all the work that goes into Bay Rides, Musco Rider, East Hants Community Transit. It's wonderful to see all of those CTOs working together. So we will be in touch. Thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, I would like to move back to item 5, as Councillor Cleary had stepped out of the room there for just a minute for a call for declaration of conflict of interest. I want to make sure that for due diligence? No? We are good. Excellent. Thank you. So next, we're going to move to item 11, public participation. I have one individual signed up at this point on Zoom, Madam Clerk.
That is correct.
Joe Nemi. Do we have Joe on the line?
I believe we do, yep. Should just take a minute for AV operator to get that set up.
This is a really big deal. We've caught up with the times here. So, can Joe hear us? Do we know that yet?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful, Joe, and we can see you as well. Welcome to Halifax's Transportation Standing Committee. So at this point, we're going to hand the mic over to you, Joe, and you will have 5 minutes to speak with us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak to you virtually today. I caught a bit of a cold, and so I did not want to bring that into the People's House. My name is Joe Niemi. I'm speaking on behalf of It's More Than Buses. It's More Than Buses believes that overloads and crowding are a significant problem impacting many important routes. The overloading problem is not something that happens from time to time, but it is persistent on some of the most important transit links in the city. And it shows that there's a serious issue in the way that we allocate transit services. We would like to see something done very soon with the resources that we have. At the October TSC meeting, it was said that overloads weren't a big problem, that they're a thing that happens from time to time, and that there weren't enough drivers to address the issue. But then the next month, trips were reinstated on routes that didn't expressly need them. Transit supply is not being implemented in a way that meets transit demand. Our investigations and reports from riders show that the overcrowding problem was worse in spring 2023 than in any other recorded time period. And the issues were exacerbated in the fall with the return of students to classes. Unfortunately, we don't have access to the most up-to-date numbers. Ridership is up 30% on corridor routes, but only 12% on peak hour express routes. And yet, on November 20th, Halifax Transit reinstated some service on routes. These 55 trips are generally on the peak hour express routes or the regional express routes that don't run full and overlap with each other. Overcrowding is a serious issue. If you can't get on the bus, you can't get to work or class. And if you made it on the bus, it becomes very uncomfortable, which drives people away from using the service, which is not what we'd like to see. Even 8 to 10 extra trips each day for the 90 would make a meaningful difference to a lot of people. Is it reasonable to have reinstated trips on duplicate routes that aren't very busy when other routes are bursting at the seams? Is using resources in this way in line with the policies and principles of the Moving Forward Together plan? It's More Than Buses asks the committee to pass a motion telling Halifax Transit not to add more departures to routes that aren't routinely full. And additionally, to pass a motion directing Halifax Transit staff to draft and implement a short-term plan to make changes to ease overcrowding. We put forward some ideas in our recent blog post. First, acknowledge the problem, make overloads and crowding a priority concern. Improve data sharing. The latest transit numbers that we have access to only covered the spring. Prioritize. Stop putting buses on routes that duplicate and don't experience overloading. Improve dispatch. Busy routes running late and bunching are persistent issues. Educate riders. Passenger behavior affects headways and delays departures, so encourage passengers who can to sit toward the rear or debus through the rear doors. And finally, we think that Halifax Transit should acquire more articulated buses and deploy them on overloaded routes. Thank you very much for your time, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Joe. Really, did we lose Joe? Is he still here? Okay, great. I just wanted to check. Does council have any questions? Any comments? Way Mason. Councillor Mason, over to you.
Hey, Joe, mostly I wanted to see if you could hear me, because this is the first time we've done this, and we're all very excited. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. So beyond the reinstated, I agree with everything that we heard today. There is an issue with the articulated buses, which has been identified by staff, which is that they don't come in electric in the run of route that we need. So then we would have to consider diesel, and that's an issue. But those are things we can cross, or hopefully the market will supply the ones we need in electric within the next year or two. But regular buses are available. Are there other, what do you think about, there were also in the last KPI report, there were other routes that were significantly under the ridership goals and moving forward together. Would you also consider those, or would you look at the ones that had been suspended during COVID, because it was acknowledged that they already were under the kind of mandated required users?
Yeah, so the minimum service standard for peak hour express routes is just 20 riders per trip. All of the routes now appear to be meeting that service standard, but that's still only about 2/3 of a full seated bus. And the peak hour buses are not usually full in rush hour. So some of the routes that we've actually gone and investigated, it's more than buses counted passengers on a couple of Friday afternoon rush hours. Heading northbound from Scotia Square, buses average just 19 passengers. Looking at lots of the peak hour express routes use this stretch of Barrington to leave downtown, including the 150s and 160s going to Portland Hill and the 180s heading to Sackville.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Oathhead.
Thank you, Chair, and Joe, thank you for your, I'll call it presentation, but your comments. And thank you for mentioning the 90, which is of great concern to me. And I understand one of the things that we're trying to do with the 90 to take the pressure off was to bring back the 194, am I right, Dave? Or increase it to 194. So we're trying to address this in a number of ways, because I have people in West Bedford, and Councillor and Chair, you would from further on, who would dearly love to take transit and are either standing or can't get on, as you mentioned. It's tough, though, in the sense that taking away, like we might have wanted to have 30 people on a bus, but there's 19, Joe, to use your example, but those people who have made decisions to use transit may not have bought a car, may have moved to a certain location, whatnot. To remove their service is something that we can't take lightly as well. I think it is time for us to ask for a staff report at some point here on what the plans are from transit to deal with overloading and people standing, whatnot. Well, I think that's something we could discuss, Madam Chair, perhaps after this, if that's, because I think it would be nice to, in addition to the KPIs, to get a little bit more of a description of what exactly is being done. I think it's a reasonable request, regardless of whether all the suggestions we heard from the speaker are good or not, but at least, you know, there's probably are some in there. So, Joe, thank you, and I don't know if you had any thoughts about the 90, 194 scenario or any other suggestions about the 90, but it's certainly one that aggravates me in my district, and I know Patty and Patricia and Dave are well aware of those concerns on the 90. And we hope to have a ferry someday, too, so.
Thank you, Joe. I don't see any more questions for you. I just want to say that I really appreciate your input today. And hopefully, as Councillor Oathhead has just mentioned, we will be moving forward quite soon to look at a much more detailed strategic approach to address the crowding. So thank you, Joe. Have a lovely day, and really appreciate you joining us virtually. This is really cool.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So colleagues, we are going to move on to item 12, information items. We have none. Staff reports, 13.1.1 active school travel plan. We do not have a we do not have a presentation for this. However, I do see Lucas Pitts. He was here and can chat with us. Do we have a mover for this motion? Councillor Mason.
I move that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that the Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to draft a plan for Halifax Transit Safety Program for further consideration. Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. The Active School Transportation Plan motion, sorry, isn't in the agenda online, so that I downloaded. So And I don't have 1311. Thank you so much. It's a problem when you're on top of things and you download the package on Wednesday, because then you don't have the stuff that comes later. That was not a sign of being behind, it was a sign of being ahead. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee recommends that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to initiate an HRM-led program to facilitate active and safer transportation for school-based trips that includes, 1, assessment of all schools in HRM for external consultant to establish a list of schools sorted by priority where active school travel is most feasible and beneficial, that recommends safer school travel routes and priority infrastructure improvements. 2, establishing a collective program between Halifax Regional Municipality, the Halifax Regional Center for Education, and sector stakeholder service providers to develop and deliver an active school travel education promotion and program. And 3, funding to be considered as part of the 25-26 budget process. I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Outhet. Thank you.
I don't really have a whole lot on it. I think it's great. I think we're returning to something that we had spent some time on as a community a number of years ago and then kind of fell by the wayside. I do have an amendment, maybe. I would like Lucas's comments on this. We have 2 school boards, so I'm wondering if we should include CSAP on there as well. While most of their schools are bus schools, Merritt-Mond in the south end off of Atlantic Street has a lot of people who walk to it, for example. So I feel like they may in turn say to you, we're good, but I would hate to not include them. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Lucas Pitts, Director of Traffic Management, and through the chair, the more the merrier, I say. The more people involved, the happier everybody will be.
All right, I'd like to make an amendment to add after Halifax Regional Center for Education, CSAP, schools.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary, was that a second? That was it? You're good? Councillor, sorry, we will move. Are you on the amendment? No, I'm on the main motion. Okay, you're on the main motion, so we'll call for the question for the amendment. All those in favor? All opposed? That motion has carried. Councillor Outhet. So that amendment, sorry, has carried and has been added to the motion. Councillor Outhet.
Thank you. And listen, I strongly support this and will continue while I'm here. What's happened before, Lucas, and some of this was before your time, but I'm going to put you on the spot because you can take it, you handle it well, is schools bring in consultants and they try and get the walking school bus program going and things like this. And sometimes it's parents who just, I don't know, they do seem to drive their kids more to school than we ever did. And I don't know if kids are not as waterproof as we were or something, I don't know. But something has changed and more kids are driven. But when I do meet with schools and when I meet with parents and parent advisory groups and whatnot, they say, well, we would walk our kids more if, or we would let our kids walk more if. And then they'll say, well, but there's no crossing guard here, or it's not a marked crosswalk here, or it's a marked crosswalk here, but it isn't lighted, or the speed's too high here, or there's no sidewalk here. Are you going to sort of get into that depth, and God knows whether you'll have that funding, but I mean, and things have gotten so much better in the last few years with traffic services, I think, being more responsive and trying new things and whatnot. But I look at a Larry UTEC or something where we're blocks and blocks of no crosswalks, and because they're mid-street, and we didn't used to put them on mid-street, or there's only sidewalk on one side, these sort of things. Are you going to put a lens on this report and this investigation and get the consultant to put a lens on this of, are we really going to change how some of the infrastructure to try and make it safe as well, and not just say, well, listen, you should all be walking more, it's green, it's healthy, it's, all the stuff we've heard before. But are we really going to listen to the folks and say, but you need more crossing guards, you need more crosswalks, you need, et cetera. So I think you know where I'm heading on this. Because if we just get back the same feedback, our kids don't walk because it isn't safe, then we've wasted time and money.
Through the chair, yes, the intent would be to fully analyze each school for those safety improvements and prioritize the schools and the improvements, and then return to council for consideration within the capital budgeting process. And I know right now, I think we do a pretty good job of being responsive, but we are primarily a responsive program. And, you know, I have an example that a counselor had circulated at one point where some parents had identified that, you know, the school zone was on the front of the school, and most of the kids walked through the back, through the woods, and went out the back of the school where the school zone was not. There was no sidewalks, there was no crosswalks. And we do tend to respond to that, but that's our ongoing system right now. This will make it more proactive, in that we'll have a priority list for council to consider and then start implementing.
Well, that's good, because I think there are times when you obviously have to have rules and regulations. I mean, most of us are around this table long enough to know that not everywhere is warranted for a stop sign or a crosswalk, whatever. We get that. It has to be warrants. But I still wrestle, you know, I guess I have the soft spot where I still think all schools, all playgrounds, all whatever should be as protected as possible, whether there's 10 kids an hour or 110 kids an hour, so to speak. And I hope you'll use, and I know you kind of feel that way too, or you try to. But I just hope we'll look at this, because again, I just don't want this exercise with parents saying it's still not safe and HRM saying, well, sorry, the safety's just not warranted, sort of that we used to have. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Purdy.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. Okay, well, thanks for that explanation, Lucas, because I was kind of a little cynical reading this report and going, well, it's just more money that we're going to spend for things that we already know we're lacking. And I was wondering if the schools that really need this, they're not even going to be helped. Most of our schools that need active transportation help are in the rural areas, and they're usually on like provincial streets. So we're not even able to do anything to help in that case. We already have a list of sidewalks. So if we want to prioritize schools, why wouldn't we just prioritize the sidewalks that are connectors to school zones? That would save us $325,000. Like, school groups know what are needed. And actually, your team is very responsive, so responsive, and that's amazing. So in my 3 years, we have made many of my schools in my district way safer. Lighting up crosswalks, putting those flashing beacons for the kids, especially in the early mornings, you know, before the time changes, it's dark, right? Like, cars don't see them. So excellent, amazing. So I'm just wondering why we need to spend this money. Like, for example, like Bay Rides, if we have a pot of money, I'd rather see it go to Bay Rides than to something that we're already doing to make our schools safer. However, what you just said there, you're being responsive right now, your team, and you're saying that this would kind of give you a framework so you'd be able to prioritize without being, I guess, complaint driven, being more proactive rather than complaint driven. I don't know, we don't have an unending supply of money in this. I'm not sure how to go on this, but go ahead. You comment on my things and change my mind.
Through the chair, not looking to change your mind at all. It's absolutely the prerogative of council on how to proceed. I would just add that, you know, in terms of the equity piece, often, you know, the people that complain the loudest get the infrastructure. This sort of tries to balance what is typically happens in the roads. So that's the only other piece I really wanted to add to. This will take a real true assessment from the consultant and consider the equity pieces and prioritize it based on, you know, what the parents are seeing, what is needed in the roadway. You know, it could prioritize cycle lanes, it could prioritize raised crosswalks, it could prioritize thinning roads and, you know, bump outs or what have you. It could be a number of things. It could be moving the school zone or expanding the school zone. So, you know, with the 140 odd schools, if our staff was to try and take that on, I mean, at best we could do maybe 10 a year. Without prioritizing, we just sort of randomly pick 10, and then it would take us 15 years to get through them, which seems long. So, you know, the responsive thing, like I said, we try to be as responsive as we can, and recognizing the importance of safety within our school zone. So we do prioritize it. But, you know, again, the people that complain the loudest are the people that are getting priority. So.
Okay, that's fair. What about the rural schools, though, that are on provincial roads that need really probably the most help in making it safer for their kids?
Through the chair, talking with Councillor Lovelace today about this, but, we are allowed to do things on provincial roads. We just need to go through the province to get permission, and then we have to fund them. So in those circumstances, we would have the additional step of having to work with the province and getting approval from the province to make any safety improvements to the roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to say thank you, Lucas, for what you've been doing in St. Margaret's Bay in particular with the rural roads. This is a good program, and I appreciate Councillor Mason putting on the CSAP for the amended motion. My question, I guess, to you would be what happens with all of those private schools that we have on these main streets? And I do think that it's important for us to consider from an equity perspective. So this is my question to you, and then I'll move over to Councillor Oathett. Oh, you're Councillor Oathett, okay. Go ahead, Lucas.
Through the chair, I would leave that completely up to council's prerogative. I don't have a personal opinion from a staff level on whether private schools should be included or not included. I certainly, in terms of public funds, would suggest that because they have a lot of private funds coming in, that they wouldn't have priority over, schools in diverse or poorer neighborhoods that, badly need the infrastructure. But, it's up to council how to handle the private school piece.
I do appreciate that. They are on provincial or municipal roads. So I guess that's the question that council will need to determine in the future. I don't see any more speakers, so I'm going to call for the question on the amended motion. We have that on our screen. If there's any questions with that, call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion has carried. Thank you so much, Lucas. Okay, now we're moving on to 13.1.2 Halifax Transit Safety Program, and it is my pleasure to welcome Kevin Daniels. Thank you so much for being here today. Kevin is a supervisor with Union Local 107 with Halifax Transit. We do have a presentation from Phil Harrod, Director of Transit Operations. So I'll ask Phil to come up, but I did want to say welcome to Kevin. Not sure if Kevin, have you been here before? Yes, okay, good. Great to see you again. Over to you, Phil. Yep, you just need to press that button. There we go.
Good afternoon, members of the Transportation Stand Committee and colleagues. My name is Phil Harrod. I'm the Director of Operations for Halifax Transit. I'm joined by Abhishek Singh, our business analyst, Robin Kirkbright, one of our SBOs, and several of our service supervisors who are also executive board members for NSG 107. We are here today to discuss the proposed Halifax Transit Safety Program on enhancing transit safety and improving rider experience using Halifax Transit. Various metrics are used to measure the health of a public transit system. Today, we're here to discuss the safety of customers and transit employees. As you may be aware, transit agencies across Canada are facing challenges and increased incidents in and around transit. Those challenges faced by Halifax Transit are no different. To better understand these challenges, we'll go through a few slides, first focusing on data analysis, looking at a bird's eye view of some of those challenges, a slide that includes some of the work that Halifax Transit has already initiated, and a couple of slides detailing what we want to do for a safety program. This slide is an updated slide that was presented to committee and council through our bylaw presentation. The bar graph shows calls for service Halifax Transit received from January 1st, 2018 to October 31st, 2023. As you can see, there's been continuous growth in the number of calls received. From January 1st, 2023 until October 31st, 2023, the number of calls received this year has already exceeded any of the previous years. We're averaging approximately 250 calls per month. We expect a total of approximately 3,100 by the end of the year. Categories used for this analysis, as for calls for service, are assaults, disruptive passengers, fare disputes, Halifax Regional Police or Royal Canadian Mounted Police request, intoxicated passengers, or passenger assistance. The heat map highlights the location and severity of incidents. This is also an update to a heat map already presented to council. The team has spent some time analyzing the data and breaking down the incidents to classify the severity. The yellow dots are escalated incidents, the pink more moderate, and the blue we classify as minor, again, all tied to those calls for service. It's evident that the Bridge Terminal, Mumford Terminal, Lacewood Terminal, and Scotia Square Terminal are the places where most of the incidents are happening, but it is across the service. To address these growing challenges, Halifax Transit has taken several steps. Number one, the Halifax Transit Bylaw T1200, which was approved by council and put into effect October 7th, 2023. Halifax Transit continues to work with our business partners in the Halifax Regional Police, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, regulatory bodies, and the public by making sure that they're aware of the new bylaw. The bylaw will help us standardize our approach and exercise that move towards public safety. We have revisited and revamped the way we collect and analyze data. The heat map I just showed is a great example to showcase how we can now start to look at the data and drill down on a granular level. Our service supervisors have attended and are going through additional training to better equip them to deal with these situations, most recently including situational awareness and a verbal judo course. We're updating and focusing on operational policies and procedures to better align with the operating environment that we're in today. I'm happy to say that the recruitment of 4 additional service supervisors is now complete, and we're in the final stages of issuing offer letters for those staff, which will be terminal supervisors. And the Operator Shield implementation of the conventional bus fleet is scheduled to start in the first quarter of the next fiscal. A demo product was showcased to the supervisors and bus operators a few months ago, allowing themselves to familiarize themselves with that additional layer of protection. Why the Transit Safety Program? The ultimate objective of the safety program is to enable safety of transit employees and passengers. Safety being an important topic that has operational efficiency, reputational, legal, and regulatory compliance issues attached to it. A plan with proper key performance measures and indicators, milestones, targets, and timelines would provide us with direction and act as a catalyst to help move us from reactionary to proactive. Why now? We have empirical evidence to indicate not only did the number, but the severity of incidents has increased in the last few years. As a fast-growing city, we face challenges that weren't there even a few years ago, and the safety program would help us address safety concerns and the motion passed by Councillor Mancini around transit safety. When and how? The program would need approximately 20 months after approval and budget approval to roll out successfully with multiple stages, including initiation, planning, implementation, and monitoring. Each phase would have milestones, timelines, and the stakeholder collaboration. To achieve this, the program would need a few initial staff members, including a program manager, a business analyst, and a project controller. This would encompass the overall project, the milestones, timelines, and performance indicators. The project manager would create a draft version of the program that includes communication and engagement plans, stakeholder analysis and engagement, resource and budget management, contingency and mitigation planning. A business analyst ongoing to look at the data gathering protocols, how we're doing it, analysis of incident types, visualization of those incidents, and studying the quantitative data to look at some predictive analytics. The project controller would be assistant in keeping all of that stuff moving and in line and help with reporting. And finally, the recommendation, our recommendation is that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to draft a plan for the Halifax Transit Safety Program for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Great to have you here. I'm going to move over to Councillor Oathett for questions.
Would you like me to put the motion on too, Madam
That would be
Chair?
fabulous.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to draft a plan for Halifax Transit Safety Program for further consideration. So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Mason. Over to you, Councillor Oathett.
Thank you. See it, say it, sort it. You ever heard that? I just came back from the UK. And every train, every subway, every bus that I got on, every even train similar to VIA, got on the train, and within a few seconds, this is National Transit Safety, see it, say it, sort it, text 61016 when you see something happening. It was everywhere, every few minutes. And I said to myself when I was listening to this on the tube or on the train, no surprise to anybody that I took trains while I was over there, that I wanted to talk to Dave and Patricia and you and others when I came back. So this was a great opportunity for that. So so I support this. I don't know about the three people. We are looking at one whopping tax increase next year. It'll be public on Friday. We just found out internally yesterday. So, you know, whether we're going to have how much money and people and whatnot, that'll be another discussion. But I think my worry is that we've had some really great strategies to try and improve this unacceptable situation. We all agree it's unacceptable and it's time to take action. So strategy is great, but then you got to get down to the tactics. And the tactics are what's going to really make the difference on this. And I think having the people there that we've hired and the posters and training and explaining they can call 911 versus 311 or whatever, I really think we need to do something that just jumps out the way this say it, sort it, say it, obviously didn't work well, see it, say it, sort it, hit me when I was in the UK. These is no longer acceptable. And if you see it, report it, and we're going to do something about it. We're going to try and do something about it. If not, this just becomes another bylaw, or it just becomes another program that sort of sits on the shelf and doesn't really have any impact for both passengers and operators. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this, and you may have had experience in other places, but I just hope we get down to that level and not just, let's hire people and let's come up with some more new buzzwords and some more new strategies and whatnot. Let's get really down into tactics and try and make riders and operators feel safer. That's just my little mini rant for the day. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Phil. Thank you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, absolutely. To your point, I have some experience in other places, and here in Halifax as well with transit safety. Before I left the first time, it was part of my portfolio. We were working heavily with Transport Canada then on a similar program that was much more see something, say something, much like you see in the U.S. Properties. From a federal level, that kind of faded away eventually, but as an operational person, I'm focused on what we can do and what we need to do, and I think in the last 12 months, some of the steps that we've taken, adding those additional service supervisors, getting the bylaw, in place were great steps, needed steps. And now the creation of this program, I think through my, experience and professional opinion, is that next step. And it's about the public engagement, the staff engagement to make sure we put the right resources in place, to deal with these situations. If we look at some of the work my colleagues and PACE has done, Patricia's team, around the Transit Safety Code, around the most recent program in, I deserve to feel safe in my workplace as well, I think are important steps. But exactly to your point, it's time to put the pedal to the metal and start addressing some of those concerns. The additional service supervisors, the bylaw are foundational in that first step. Now it's time to move to that overall program and take that direction and get the resources to move forward with it.
Thanks, Phil. We're
Thanks
really
for your
glad to have
comments.
you. We're glad to have you here from Edmonton. Great to be back in Halifax. So just going to ask Dave Regie for a few words.
Thank you. And just to build on what Phil said and kind of in relation to your points, Councillor. So I would say this is not just a strategy, kind of for the sake of strategy. It's a strategy to lead the tactics. I think if you read through the staff report, really like the biggest piece of the end game we see here is actually like officers, like transit safety officers. They're not police officers, but they're that missing gray I spoke about in between what our service supervisors do and what police do. And it ties back to the bylaw, from a support perspective, but then eventually it could be an enforcement perspective. So that's really the key reason why, we need the resources to build a program like that, because it is incredibly complex. It's a major change to the way we do business. But to just, I guess, to reassure, this is, this is not about a strategy that's going to sit on a shelf. This is very directly going to lead to action if we get the approval to do so. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thanks for the report and the presentation and the info that's in there. There's some stuff, so you talk about a jurisdictional scan near the end, but there wasn't a whole lot of information. And I can remember looking back at this, especially kind of mid-pandemic, although it's hard to say when the beginning and the end is, I'm not sure, but sort of around 2022. I mean, we were seeing a lot of news articles, hearing a lot of complaints about bad behavior. But I remember at the time going back and looking, and if you can go back to 2015, 2016, 2019, BC, Ontario, New York, everywhere, there were increasing number of incidents on transit properties going back pre-pandemic. But it seems like in the last 3 years, things have just gone kind of crazy. It is one of the #1 complaints I get now. I have Mumford Terminal in my district, but safety around, and Dave and I have talked about this a number of times, safety around the terminal itself. I've had a number of people say, I'm not going there anymore because I don't feel safe, young women, for example. And so I actually think this is a really good thing. I'm not as concerned about the 3 people to start off with, although when you get to the 18 safety officers, 3 new supervisors, 4 security monitors, that's when, to Councillor Eddy's point, the money really starts to pile up in the millions of dollars in salaries. But I think this is a really good proactive approach, and probably we have been complacent and very lucky to have not as bad. If you look at incidents, I think about cities that have traffic or transit police. Go to New York, for example. Now, some of it is about fare beating and other things, but the number of incidents on subways, buses, trains has increased everywhere. Do you have any comparable jurisdictional data, how we're comparing? Because I get the sense that we're not as bad, but it looks like we're heading in the same direction. Or maybe we are as bad, but it's underreported. I don't know. And people like security monitors, will these be, I envision them as, sitting in some sort of command center, lots of TVs from cameras at our transit terminals, maybe even be able to access cameras on buses. Is that kind of what they're going to be looking at? Would this be a more proactive approach to dealing with this? Or is it still sort of reactive, incident on a bus, driver calls, supervisor or safety officer comes out, deals with it at that time? Bunch of questions in there.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair to Councillor Cleary. Absolutely. So to start with, around the data perspective, having spent the last several years in a larger property out west with peace officers, I would say our numbers are probably growing, although scaled to the size of a city of Halifax, pretty much the same as the rest of the country. Probably one of the things, concerning is it's not just the number of calls, but the severity of calls, that are increasing. To move forward with this program, I actually expect our numbers to go up as we start to report, to your comment around underreporting. But the direction will be to drive the severity down. Kind of across the board. I completely agree that we've been underreporting. We've been underreporting, I would say, internally and externally. Hence the revamp of our data capture and how we analyze that in May of this year. And that's how now today, like with the heat map or defining those calls for service, we're able to speak to, there's X amount of calls of this category and that category. We're much better defined there. I think that the idea of the peace officers being on the road, they will be a response to incidents that happen, but they will also be proactive. Much like peace officers in other properties, they will be on the buses, around the platforms, both as a visual deterrent and a reaction when something does happen, allowing our service supervisors to focus more on the service. We talk about adherence and all those kind of things, but those folks will still be out there, paired up with the peace officers and managing that service and those responses. My intent around the control room monitors is exactly what you described and what you would see in multiple other transit properties, that they would be monitoring more so terminals, things like that, looking for, situations that are developing, getting into some predictive analysis and looking at where things are happening and how we're deploying our resources. But they would be responding, the peace officers, in conjunction with our normal network supervisors to the mobile supervisors to respond and hopefully head off incidents before they escalate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Over to you, Councillor Purdy. You're next.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for this. It's concerning to all of us, the escalation of the incidents and the severity of the incidents. I was wondering, can you give us an example of what a moderate versus severe incident is? Because I didn't know I didn't know how to frame that in my brain when I was reading that. What does that mean? And the supervisors that have been hired, how long have they been on the job, and have we seen a decrease in the incidents since they have been there? Because that was the whole purpose of hiring them. And if we haven't, do we have a timeline of when we can start to see things turn around due to their presence there? And I was also wondering, are they allowed to get physical with folks who are acting out in antisocial behavior? Just anecdotally talking to folks at Alderney Landing, the violent outbursts, there was no effect when security was dispatched, but as soon as HRP was dispatched, then they started to see a decrease in the violent incidents. So just wondering how that kind of works together. And also, how are the operators being supported in all of this? If they're, I would not. I walked through Alderney Landing once, and I was just verbally accosted by someone. I'm I'm never walking through. I'm not taking the ferry at night. I'm not going to put myself in that situation ever again. It's a very unsafe feeling. So if operators are working in this environment day in, day out, how are they being supported in the workplace? And are panic buttons a thing? Can we give operators panic buttons instead of having to text or call somebody? Okay, I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Excuse me, through the chair to the councillor, to start with around the heat map. Severe incident would be an assault, a produced weapon type of call. Moderate may be an intoxicated passenger that's slightly belligerent or maybe sleeping. And then in the lower category might be some day-to-day things, unfortunately, like some fare evasion conversations and anything else. So the severe ones are anything that would present, in my opinion, a true safety risk. So the additional service supervisors we're hiring, as I stated, we're just in the process now of issuing those offer letters this week. So they haven't been hired. Hopefully, we'll have them, on the ground here in the next 2 weeks. My belief in what's going to happen there again is we're going to see an increased amount of incident reporting because we have staff on site doing that reporting. Okay. And our long-term goal there is to reduce the severity. Our service supervisors do not, get physical with anyone. That's a police response. Unfortunately, sometimes that does occur and they are allowed to protect themselves. But just like Alderney Landing or anywhere else, any type of physical altercation is an immediate call to 911 and then responders, whether it's HRP or RCMP, depending on the location. So the four there, the intent again will be, we'll look at those numbers as they come out and start to, again, hopefully see a drop in the severity of incidents at those locations, and have the operators, have some, knowing that they're going to that terminal, that there is that support there. In regards to operator support, I think as, discussed previously, our employee support and development team as a team of supervisors that provide direct support and guidance through themselves through EFAP and other programs to address those operator concerns. On the road directly, we have a team of mobile supervisors that respond to incidents on site as they're happening, and also provide that supervision and support across the board. And for the operators, hopefully they feel with the soon installation of the operator protective barriers that they will have another layer there. The question around the panic button is probably, so yes, there are alternative means of communications, but probably something I would rather not discuss openly, but happy to discuss otherwise, just so that, again, those tools and those opportunities for our operators are still there, and folks aren't quite aware of all the tools available to the operators.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move over to Councillor Mason. I'm going to ask the clerk, please. Actually, he doesn't have a time for whatever reason. He's missing time, so let's make sure he has 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I have unlimited time. This is amazing, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm going to take a slightly, so I'm going to frame it first, and I want to get into some weedy stuff as I do. I am not as concerned. I mean, it's going to cost money, and we have to be sure of the taxpayers, but I see this more like the cost of gas went up, and we got to pay for it. I can't sit in this room with the media and the public and all of these union folks behind them and say, oh, well, we'll think about it. Like, obviously we have to do it. Our employees have to be safe. So to me, this is as inevitable as the sun coming up, is that we're going to have to find a way to pay for it. Now, how we're going to do it and exactly what it's going to look like is kind of more where I want to go. And so part of what and the others we need to have, especially the transit safety officers, I think, is we should be building that capacity now, because theoretically, he says, looking at Dave, when we get to bus rapid transit, we're going to do proof of payment, all-door boarding, all that kind of stuff. We need to have this in place, right? So we don't want to be building that when we're building the other $500 million to $1 billion worth of infrastructure we're going to lay down at that time. So I think this is a good start. Going back to my notes here, what I'm interested in is to get a little technical, is when we're talking about having a permanent project controller and business analyst for this, and we have transit safety officers and supervisors, which I think we should have, but we currently have our mobile supervisors, right, going out right now, kind of playing the role of that weren't originally trained for, even though they are special constables and all that stuff, and can do a lot of these things around traffic control and responding and de-escalating and all that stuff. And we also have our network supervisors. So I'm wondering how that's all going to relate. Like, do we really need to have these several divisions of labor with like these different specifications, or should it be a more integrated approach? Instead of having 18 traffic safety officers, we have suddenly, I don't know how many, you can tell me how many mobile supervisors we have right now out there, and maybe they're all brought up to that standard. That was one question. Like, how are we going to make those work I'm worried that there might be some redundancies there. I'd like to see both how the management and operational part are not going to overlap too much and support one another. And then the second question is just very basic, like, will the transit safety officers, I didn't see it in there or in your presentation, are they going to be special constables as well? Will they be able to do those extra things that we've seen? I didn't know they were special constables until I came on a major car accident at North and Gottingen, and it was actually the transit people were there before the cops, and they'd closed the street. And it was like, excellent. That was just a couple months ago. So anyway, those are my two questions. Love to hear your thoughts.
Through the chair to the councillor. So you would look at most major transit properties, they are separate divisions tied together operationally. The service supervisors would focus on the service. The network supervisors would focus on the service. So again, often we come in and we talk about KPIs and we talk about adherence, we talk about lost trips. We would refocus those service supervisor teams on the actual service itself. With the amount of incidents we're having and the responses we're having, we're doing that. The peace officers, different from a special constable, and I'm not exactly sure on the Nova Scotia wording, just the Alberta wording, under the Solicitor General of Alberta, those are very different authorities. Today, our special constables can write parking tickets and do some traffic control, where the peace officers, the safety officers could have right up to the authority of arrest. There is a very different qualification and training behind that. When we get into that stuff and the enforcement of the bylaw, we will get into, much like HRP, RCMP, things in the legal system around use of force continuum and large amounts of other things. So there are clear differences between it and a clear focus. We want the service supervisor group, we want everybody, but specifically the service supervisor group, to be approachable by all, be that community support and that support to service. By tying that in with the peace officers and the odd chance that it may come to an enforcement scenario, it would actually, cause a little more issue than not. As far as how that would integrate any other transit property, the security room monitors and the network supervisors are all together. They're across the table from each other in a single room. And they are feeding back and forth as to, hey, we need security, or hey, operations, are you aware there's some kind of hold up at the bridge terminal? For our example.
So I don't have the window open with time, so I'm just going to, as a follow-up, just say to staff, especially looking over at the lawyer, this sounds an awful lot like the debates they're having at the Board of Police Commissioners around what, I'm not even sure we have a peace officer as described in our legislation, because we're trying to figure out a way to make a special constable be able to sit with someone at a hospital when they're doing an admit, so we don't have a police officer sitting there. So I think there may be a legislative gap that we need to overcome to be able to do what you're talking about in Nova Scotia, unless we decide and the province agrees through regulation changes to make it so special constables with training can do those things. Welcome to it. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I have similar concerns as Councillor Purdy. Lacewood Terminal. It's very, it can be very violent at times. There's continuous breaking of glass. Seniors feel unsafe. I get calls from residents who feel they don't want to go to that particular terminal because they fear for their safety. I'm just wondering, for these more volatile areas, HRP is called, but usually by the time, they approach or get to the terminal, of course, whoever is causing these issues is gone. And I'm just wondering, how do we deal with these more troublesome areas? I know every area has its issues, but I find this concerning. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor. To start with, Lacewood Terminal has an extra duty HRP officer that starts there at the end of school day and is there until approximately 1800 or 6 p.m., depending on what's going on at other places. That is a initiative Halifax Transit has had in place now for well over a year. It starts at Lacewood, honestly, just because of the school let out with the school next to it. Then that officer moves to Mumford and then possibly on to the bridge terminal. The Lacewood terminal itself has a security guard there, and the service supervisors we were speaking of earlier, one of the two locations that those new service supervisors will be stationed is Lacewood terminal. Again, hopefully we'll have boots on the ground here in the next couple of weeks, but for those 4 staff, the focus will be the Dartmouth Bridge terminal. Lacewood terminal, most of the data that we see, the Lacewood challenges are that after-school hour until approximately 6 p.m. Then some folks move off to Mumford, and then eventually they all get together at the bridge terminal. So the Lacewood person, service supervisor, will be at Lacewood, Mumford, and the buses in between.
If they have extreme situations there, will they be informing the counselors, or I'm just wondering so I can monitor this area? If there are any more complaints, it would be nice to get some feedback of what's going on. Because I know as well some of the students hang out there during lunchtime. I'm not trying to blame all of the students, but I mean, just the consistency of young people hanging around lunchtime and after school. So there's a couple of questions there.
Through the chair to the counselor. We're available to talk about those situations, but again, it's some of those analytics and stuff we're looking at and really have improved since May, to get those standards. The numbers are showing us now, again, that at Lacewood, most of the concerns are actually happening after the after-school things. We are seeing some students at lunchtime, but not with the numbers or the incidents that are happening. And again, in trying to be an open and inclusive and welcoming space, we're just not looking to move everybody along all of the time. I've attended Lacewood multiple times myself, and have had some interactions with regular customers there, along with some of the students. And sometimes when you get a large group of students together, or youth, they can be a little louder than others. I would say that absolutely there's been some challenges there, but maybe not as extreme as some other places. Just volume and noise more than some of the violence. Not to say that there hasn't been issues, but again, our intent with that service supervisor being there is to increase reporting on the incidents that are happening and the type of incidents and the time of day.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdy, I do just want to say we have 30 minutes left in this meeting. We've got items still on the floor to move forward, but I'll go to you for a second time. Thank you.
Okay, she's a tough chair, this one. Okay, just one more question. Yeah, youth are very noisy. You should come to my house when all my kids are home. It's young people, very loud. Okay, so question about repeat offenders. What is the policy for repeat offenders? And just a question about, of all the severe incidents that have taken place, do we have stats on how many arrests or warrants were issued?
Through the chair to the counselor, any information around arrests or stuff like that would be with the regional police force, and not us. We don't have the authority or ability to arrest anyone. Repeat offenders, through our process and now through the bylaw, there is an escalating ladder. Where, maybe, in the past, and if we had banned you through the Property Protection Act, maybe it's a week, and then it moves to a month, and then it moves to up to 6 months.
A week.
Depending on the incident, absolutely, because public transit is also there to get people where they're going. So we have to take all of those pieces into consideration. Within the bylaw, it also has a ladder both in how we can, ban people from our property as a whole, the addition of vehicles and stuff like that, which wasn't available under the Property Protection Act. And there's also a ladder of escalation around fines. So, your first fine, whatever the numbers are off the top of my head, but, are $10, and the second time is $20. And then, like any other bylaw, the appeal process to appeal those pieces. But information on charges and stuff like that would be with Halifax Regional Police or RCMP.
Okay, so just a comment about this. So a $10 fine and a week ban. I mean, these are not deterrents to bad behavior. So in your opinion, do you think that these first offenses should be increased to meet the severity of the first offense? Or do you think that would be a deterrent? I mean, I think it would, but what?
So through the counselor, through the chair to the counselor, there's nothing saying that it starts off at a week. It is all determined based on the investigation of whatever that incident is. Having worked at multiple transit properties across the country, absolutely it is. When you're a person that relies on public transit to get you to school, to get you to work, to get you to the mall, wherever it is you may go, and you lose that privilege, for a day, for a week, it absolutely does impact that. There are times we may ban somebody for the rest of the night because maybe they're having a night out and a little too much enjoyment that didn't fit within our standards. So I think anytime you take access away from public transit from someone, you have to really consider those longer term ramifications. But it is scalable to us as the transit agency and Halifax Regional Police, RCMP, to apply what they think is applicable. If it ends up in criminal charges, obviously police forces have ability to go above and beyond anything that we would do as transit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great discussion, colleagues. No one else is on the list here, so I'm going to call for the question. Question's been called. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion has carried. Thank you so much. Great discussion, good work, great presentation. Looking forward to seeing what this draft plan looks like. Colleagues, we're going to move on to 13.1.3, the Student Transit Pass Program. We do have a presentation from Patricia Hughes, our Director of Planning and Customer Engagement with Halifax Transit. Hey, Patricia, how you doing?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you. Patricia Hughes, Director of Planning and Customer Engagement. And I'm here today with a report and recommendation regarding the Student Transit Pass Program. As a bit of background, Kingston, Ontario made headlines with their student program, which started back in 2020 with grade 9 students and quickly grew to all the high schools in the area and all the high school students. They had immediate ridership increases for those students, and they also saw a lot of increases once the students had graduated. So they've shared their success with many other agencies, shared their positive stories across the country. And now the founder of that program is leading an organization called Get on the Bus. And I put their logo there with the tagline, "Inspiring a Youth Transit Revolution." In Halifax, our journey began with a pilot in 2021, which included 4 high schools. Phase 2 of that pilot continued with those 4 high schools, but we also saw the addition of 6 junior high schools at that time, which was just about a year ago in last fall. I would say at this point too that both agencies, HRCE and CSAP, have been really excellent partners. They've given us opportunities to go in and teach the students about riding transit. The administration have been great logistically, and it's been a really great program for the students. So to move a bit into the results of the pilot, both Phase 1 and Phase 2 were viewed extremely favorably by the parents and students. We've only really heard positive things from the participants. Stories about increased freedom and mobility and independence, reducing financial burden on parents, burden on parents. And I'd say what we hear the most is requests for expansion to other schools, more so than anything else. So definitely from a participant perspective, it's been positive. I also wanted to raise that in earlier staff reports, we had concerns about the potential for overcrowding. And just to follow up on that point we had mentioned in previous reports, we've really not seen evidence of that being a challenge with these pilot schools. Where we have seen a challenge is measuring the impact and success. So we don't have data on how many students are riding the bus or how often or where they're going. We've had some surveys done that really speak to the feeling of flexibility, and especially midday students that have a free period or after school and getting to places in the evening. There's a flexibility is a key theme, but it's challenging to get quantifiable data. And I would also say a key part of this is the intent of the program. We want to see the immediate ridership increases, but it's also about the long-term impact. It's about building the students' knowledge and ability, and it's about changing that culture of transit ridership. So looking at the short-term ridership is really just part of the equation. But we did look at what data we do have. I think the bit we pulled out that is perhaps the most telling is near Woodlawn High. So if we looked at the 14 bus stops kind of in close proximity to the high school, so that immediate neighborhood, and we did have an increase in boardings there of over 50%, which tells us that that's a pretty good indicator that the students are using the service. So I guess to summarize the pilot results, all of the partners felt that it was very valuable and worth continuing, as well as expanding if and when we can. I also wanted to speak to the program costs shown in the staff report. These are based solely on estimated revenue loss. So this is a bit different than what we've done with other programs in the past, where it was about determining what an appropriate fare was or an appropriate cost per trip. In this case, it's really about what do we think the students are putting in the fare box now, and what would our revenue loss be, and making sure we're covering that, not taking a revenue loss. So it also doesn't account for future growth of the program or those things. The costing is really just offsetting the potential revenue loss. And that's a bit of a change in approach from how we've costed things for other programs. And a bit more about costs. They were determined based on the 22-23 enrollment numbers that HRCE gave us, and the survey data, the level of transit service in the communities, and the level of transit usage in the communities around them. So based on this, we've estimated that for the schools that are currently participating, to continue that permanently, it would be an annual cost of just over $370,000 a year. And if we wanted to look to expand to all of the high schools and junior highs that have regular access to transit service, that cost would be at about $1.8 million a year annually. At this point, although there's certainly a desire, I think by all parties involved, there's no immediate funding source for either of these options to become permanent. I would say too, there's definitely lots of excitement about the program, and everyone we talk to sees a lot of value in terms of like the short-term value, the long-term value for sustainable transportation, and is working to find a solution. But we're just not quite ready to find. We just haven't quite found a permanent funding solution that we can share with you yet today. In the meantime, however, though, a big part of why we're here today is that while we work together on finding funding, we do have passes out there that expire December 31st. It would be very impactful to allow those to expire, both for those families, and because we've made a lot of progress in terms of ridership and behavioral change and momentum with those schools. So in collaboration with HRCE, we're proposing an interim step to extend the existing pilot to the end of this current school year, which is June 2024. We estimate that cost at about $200,000. $185,000 of that would be for the HRCE students, and they are committed to funding that cost. The balance there would be for the CSAP programs. Our focus really has been on the funding conversations with HRCE because we know that the usage and the cost per student is much, much lower with CSAP. So HRCE is willing to cover their share of that. We're also looking for direction to continue exploring funding opportunities for the full program. This is really just an interim step. June will be here right around the corner. So looking for Transportation Standing Committee and Regional Council's direction to continue, or not, I guess, exploring that bigger program. A few other considerations when thinking about the program. The first is related to operational concerns. So overloads were not a significant factor during the pilot, but if we do expand to other schools, there are some schools that we see overloads now, so we do expect to have some capacity concerns. The report also speaks a bit to youth-related safety incidents, which we've already just had a bit of a discussion on safety. We don't know what the potential impacts would be. Also, in terms of timeline, the passes expire at the end of December, so getting those new passes out to extend to June, we can do that fairly quickly. But if there was a larger program, we do expect that it would take some time to get something up and operational. So there are some details about that in the staff report. So finish up, there's 4 recommendations in the report. The first is really about approving the extension to the end of the school year for those schools that are currently participating. The second is to accept the financial contribution from HRCE to do so. The third recommendation, the intent there is to look for direction on whether council wants us to continue to pursue the full program, which is to the high schools and junior highs that have regular transit service. And finally, the fourth recommendation is to provide direction to continue pursuing funding opportunities, either for the high schools, the junior highs, or both, which are options F, G, and H in Table 1 of the report, and look for funding for those. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Transportation Standing Committee recommend to Halifax Regional Council, 1, approve the extension of Phase 2 of the Student Transit Pass Pilot Program, which includes 4 high schools and 6 junior highs, to the end of current school year, June 2024, to accept a contribution of $185,000 from the Halifax Regional Centre for Education, HRCE, towards the extension of Phase 2 of the program, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute a contribution agreement. 3, approve the scope of the full implementation of the Student Pass Pilot Program, as further detailed in the staff report dated November 4th, 2023, with such implementation including 10 additional high schools and 27 junior high schools pending funding approval. And 4, direct the CAO to continue to pursue funding opportunities for the full expansion of the program, including options F, G, H on Table 1 of the staff report, with such expansion being conditional on the municipality receiving financial contributions from third parties, including other levels of government, which at least reasonably offset the anticipated shortfall in HRM transit revenue associated with such expansion, and authorize the CEO to negotiate and execute agreements or arrangements that may be necessary to receive such funding and fully expand the Student Transit Pass program.
Seconded by Councillor Oathhead. Councillor Mason.
This is great. I'm really glad, like, first of all, let me just back out of this. I was reading that very slowly because I'm at the age now where I realized it was too small. I was struggling to read it. So once I blew it up, it was fine. It doesn't get any better. The best part is, so Get on the Bus are great. I've spoken at a couple of their virtual town halls and gotten to know them, and they've become a national organization. And they actually hold up our program as a great example of a way for larger cities in Kingston, right? There's 60,000 people, to bring transit to the youth. And I want to remind everybody that one of our commitments was to try and make transit free to people under 18 and over 65 in the United Way poverty report that council endorsed 4 or 5 years ago. And we've been working toward that with the under 12 and then the school thing. And we decided to prioritize youth first. I think, though, that it is fair. Part of what we thought would happen, of course, would be this would mean less yellow buses on the road, and that's why we went from just high schools to high schools and junior highs, because we heard from the school board that if it was just high schools, they still had to have all the yellow buses on the road. So we're still hopeful, I think, that there will be an operational savings for them that can help them fund this. But I also think it's bigger than that. I think there's a societal piece. So I am hopeful that we've had discussions, as per the report, that where it talks about different funding sources, between the Joint Regional Transportation Agency and the Department of Education. I hope they come up with the funding. I think there would be an argument from CSAP operationally that most of their schools are bus schools, as we discussed earlier, and there aren't going to be a lot of them, it's a different thing. They're not going to be necessarily taking our bus, but at the same time, do I want kids who go to the French school to not have access to the transit system and the freedom that that pass would potentially give them? Of course not. So I hope they'll come to the table. I think they will. I mean, we've had some signs that there's some interest, but I guess my question is, other than I think this is one of the most important things we're doing, I think it's very good to provide this mobility and access to transit to these this age range. My question is, what is our timeline? Like, when are we back to, what do we do now? Is it, if it's September, do we need to have an answer from the various funding bodies by July, June? Like, how pressing is this for us?
That's a great question. So the passes would only go to the end of the school year. In a perfect world, we would get back into the, if we're going to continue in any manner, back into distribute new ones in June, so they're also good for the summer. We have ran the program not just for the academic year, but also through the summer in the past years, which I think has a potentially different and also great amount of value. So we would be looking to come back potentially to council before June.
So I will say this out there to the media who's still watching from home, because the one that was here has left. There are 24,000 kids in the English system and thousands in the French system that should be harassing their parents to call their MLA to demand this get funded. Can you imagine, as someone growing up in Dartmouth, having a bus pass all summer? Can you imagine what that would have been like, the freedom that would have given you? Like, I think that's fantastic. And there should be a large, calling out for this transportation justice, I guess. So hopefully we can see that happen in June, July, because or in time for June, July is probably too late now already. But, the sooner we get this done, the better. I think that, anything we can do as political folks to help goose that discussion along, I think we all need to do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will just say I completely agree with you, because this is definitely a question and conversation with the Minister of Education. Councillor Oathead.
Thank you, and I agree with Way's comments, other than I can't imagine growing up in Dartmouth. No, but, dear. Patricia, thank you for the presentation. We have heard concerns from operators about the certain age group and being free and trying to regulate that. How's this worked as far as, because they have passes and this sort of thing, how's it worked from the operator's perspective? Because I strongly support this both as a marketing exercise as well as the things that Way said about environmental and freedom and this sort of thing. But how's it worked from the operator's level? What's the feedback you've been getting? Are there any tweaks needed if this was to be expanded to how passes are used, the type of passes, how to deal with somebody who doesn't have a pass? How has it been sort of just in that weeds operational level for a minute?
Sure, yeah, and I'm just thinking now, some of the concerns that have been raised in the past have been about that those that are 12 and under travel for free.
Yes.
I think that a large part of the concerns is not actually with those that are 10 or 11 or 12. It's the youth that maybe are potentially a bit older than that and are saying that they're younger. This is I think it's, I can't give a very straightforward answer because it is a complicated situation, but it does mean that the students would be free with this pass anyway. So it kind of removes that barrier conflict point about are you really 12 or are you not? Because if you're older than 12, you would have the pass. Although it may result in more students traveling more often. So it is I think a complicated conversation, and it changes the conversation a little bit.
But the pass in theory and the use of passes and whatnot has been positive.
Yes.
And you don't see it need tweaked, so to speak, or anything. You think the passes as are good and
Yeah, I'm not aware of any concerns with the passes and showing the passes themselves in the schools that are doing it.
Yeah, no, it's good. No, it's interesting because I think this has the potential to be something, it is good and it could even be better, so to speak. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for this, Patricia. And you asked one of my questions. Wondering if there is policy in place for bad behavior, if this does end up expanding, and what will be the consequences? Like, will passes be taken away? Like, should that be something that's in place prior to this going live, if that does happen? I'm also wondering if overcrowding is still an issue on many of the routes, and this potential expansion will exacerbate that. I feel like we should add an amendment in the fourth point there that says this is contingent on financial contributions from other levels of government and third parties, and contingent on solving the overcrowding issues until that's successfully addressed. Yeah, so that we're not adding more inconvenience to our paying customers who actually rely on this for their jobs and other things. And what about the students who go to school in rural high schools, like that have no transit? Do they also?
Go ahead, Patricia.
Sure. So I guess it would be similar to any situation now. I mean, my understanding, and Phil left the room, is that we can and have taken away the passes at times. So I think we would have all the tools that we've had in the past and will continue to have. In terms of the overcrowding, there's really only a few big hotspots. I would say the largest concern is with Halifax West, which does overcrowd at school dismissal time. And it is an existing concern. You know, a lot of kids get on right at the school, and then the bus is emptied out by around halfway through the loop, right? So there would be even more people trying to get on of that bus. And that one is probably the most significant issue that we're concerned about. But it is already happening today, so I guess it would be up to council if that was a reason to not pursue it at that school. But again, in terms of the implementation timeline, I think that we would have a little bit of time to look at that and see what options might be available to mitigate it. And for rural schools, we are only looking at the schools that have access to regular transit service. So some of the rural areas, like if there's only Regional Express, we haven't included that family of schools. And we haven't looked at necessarily just where the school is. We've looked at the catchment area around it. So I would give as an example Bayview High School. We know that not many students would be able to take the bus to and from that school, but there's quite a few that live in the Timberley area that might take the bus into and out of Bears Lake for part-time jobs or shopping or recreational. So we've included that school because there's the homes of the students are in areas where transit might be useful to them. But anything that's outside, when the homes are outside of where there's regular transit service, we haven't included those.
Okay. I would like to add an amendment then to add that the overcrowding.
Counselor?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Do
just
I
going
need
to ask
come
you to
back?
hold off on 1 second so that we can put a motion on the floor. Sorry about that. To extend the meeting past 3 p.m. Would you care to do that? So moved, Counselor Outhet.
Yep.
Second it. Okay, great. Thank you. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Go.
Okay, just an amendment to add to the a fifth bullet point, or doesn't matter, I guess, to successfully address the overcrowding issues at Park West and any other potential school before this is implemented.
Counselor, I'm going to ask Dave Riggy to speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So just listening, I guess a couple of thoughts. It would be challenging to define like what is solving the overcrowding, because as I'd kind of mentioned in the last meeting a month ago, there's a lot of overcrowding happening now, but there will always be some level of overcrowding. That's a natural. So like, I guess thinking about how staff would action that, I'm having a hard time, I guess, kind of understanding like what's the definition of solving overcrowding. And
So running 2 buses instead of 1 at the high
right, but I mean, does that mean there's never any overcrowding anywhere in the system? Because that won't ever happen. So I think that's the challenge here. And there's overcrowding happening in certain parts of the system, but that doesn't necessarily impact schools that are on the other side of the city. The last thing I would say is that school travel, like travel to and from school, often happens not the same peak hour as your commuters. So I think generally speaking, you don't have that same overlap. And again, as Patricia had said kind of last meeting and this one, like the overcrowding is a complicated issue. It's not, it's not the same everywhere. It's not the same at times of day. So I think like trying to tie this to solving overcrowding, I don't know that staff could actually action that.
At this point, we do know that through our earlier conversation with Councillor Outhet, that we would consider putting forward a motion specifically to that strategic piece around overcrowding. So just wanted to to mention that. You are currently out of time.
Okay, I'll come back.
Councillor Outhet, over to you.
Yeah, and listen, I so strongly support this program, and I just thought two things that came to mind. I mean, you could, and I don't think Tricia's amendment is quite the way to go, but I think as we plan for this, staff would have to keep capacity in mind. I mean, we at Halifax West, be it Upper Timbuktu, you'd have to be capacity concerns. The other thing is that could there be, like right now, don't we have Tuesdays is special for seniors and whatnot? Could there be time concerns about this? If it got to the stage that people going to and from work were standing or not being able to get on the bus because of this, could we say that the bus passes work between 3 and 5, but not between 5 and 7, or whatever? And I think I'd like to see us have that kind of creativity or flexibility if overcrowding, gets to be an issue. But I just think that one of the factors that you should look at, staff, though we really want to do this and should do this, would be capacity. I mean, you have to consider that. I don't think that's unreasonable. All right, I'm seeing nodding heads, so, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for clarification, if funding does not come in from other levels of government or other places, this will not move forward because this is a $1.8 million ask on our already overinflated budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, it will not come forward.
That's right. The motion as written is contingent on external funding partners.
It's contingent on external funding partners. So if they don't come through, this does not move forward.
As written, that's correct.
So write your MLA, Councillor Purdy.
My
Okay, thank
MLAs.
you. We continue to run out of time here. Are you good?
I'm good.
Everybody's good?
I've been good.
So time is slipping, that's right. So Councillor Mason's asking me the question. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great, that has moved forward. Thank you so much for this great conversation and presentation. Appreciate it always. 13.1.4, proposed 2024 meeting schedule. Councillors? Kate, can you put the motion on the floor and then let's move forward with that? There's the motion on your agenda.
Okay. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee approve the proposed 2024 Transportation Standing Committee meeting schedule as outlined in the staff memorandum.
Seconded by Councillor Mason. What is your question, Councillor Purdy?
So wondering why some meetings start at 1:30 and why September 26th is slated as no meeting.
So the reason that some of the meetings are starting at 1:30 has to do with the timing of other meetings. We all got together at the clerk's office to find out how to kind of
Gotcha.
work everything together so there wasn't any overlap with counselors that are on multiple standing committees and community councils and all that
Fair.
stuff.
Fair.
September, it really should just say September, no meeting. And that has to do with the upcoming municipal election.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right.
And that is the same for the October meeting, is if required, and the same with the December meeting. We wanted to have that there in case the standing committee feels they need to meet in December, since there very well may not be a meeting in October.
Thank you. Are you good, Councillor Purdy?
I'm good. Thank
Councillor
you.
Oathead, question?
I believe with regional council, but definitely I know with budget committee, they did look at the February university break. I know that sometimes impacts me because of my wife and Sean because of his job. And I thought when it came to budget, I think we moved away from that week because of the university break like we do the March break. Was there any consideration or discussion of that, or or should there be? I may or may not be here. I don't know if Sean would be or not. I think that's one of the reasons why things were changed for the budget. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not, but anyway, did we give any thought to moving the February meeting a week earlier or later?
So, Councillor, I would say that based on the complexity of the clerk's office trying to manage these schedules with all of us on other standing committees, that maybe what we could do is take that back to the clerk's office, and potentially in February 2024, we review, and if we need to change that date, then we do so.
If one of us is away, so be it. If 2 or 3 of us are, then it becomes a problem, you know. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Okay, we'll call for question then. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, and that motion has carried. So, Vice Chair Purdy, I'm going to step down from the chair in order to throw this motion on the table.
They've cut me off. When you're ready, Chair Lovelace.
Great, thank you so much. I'll be really quick. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer to provide a staff report recommending the removal of Hammonds Plains Road from bylaw S900 respecting the establishment of controlled access streets for streets within the Halifax Regional Municipality. Thank you, Councillor Oathead. So I'll be really quick, and I do understand that my motion is asking for a recommendation to remove something rather than looking and saying, hey, should we remove this? And the reason for that is, well, there's a long list of reasons. So Hammonds Plains Road is a closed access highway between Highway 103 and Pockwalk Road. That was put in place well over 10 years ago. This is a section of roadway that has no streetlights, no power poles. There's plenty of driveways along there. They are legacy driveways that have been used for a couple hundred years. We have a provincial announcement now in that area of a 144-bed long-term care facility in Westwood Hills. That was just announced on Monday. We've got the province that has just released in that vicinity over 230 acres for development of Crown land. We have thousands as of right development that's taking place right now of dwellings. As of right, we've got Hammonds Plains Road is not the same roadway as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So what we're seeing is while there is more development that's happening here, the economic development has been drastically stifled by this policy decision to create this controlled access highway, which does not permit any new connector roads or roads off of Hammonds Plains Road. So through that restriction, that means that we have less opportunities to create egress for communities that have just been impacted by Nova Scotia's largest evacuation of people from a wildfire, over 16,400 people. So I'm asking, I'm asking this committee to consider how do we actually manage this in a proactive manner by looking at the fact that we've got this old policy that's locked the ability of this community to actually have connector roads, which restricts economic development, which then restricts transit. Because when you don't have these roadways and development on this main highway corridor, which is Hammonds Plains Road, Highway 213, what that does is this policy decision forces the community and the municipality to continue to consider Hammonds Plains Road as a trunk highway rather than a main street. So I would really, really like to see, and if you have a problem with the wording, I'm happy to chat about that, but I'd love to see your support to modernize S900 by removing Hammonds Plains Road. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We have a speaker. Go ahead, Councillor Mason.
So the language problem is that it says it's telling the CAO to recommend the removal. So it really needs to be, and I will propose the amendment that the staff report to consider the removal of Hammonds Plains Road so staff can give us their expert advice. Thank you.
Yep, excellent. Okay, so that is done. Okay, call for the question. Yeah, okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay, that motion has passed. All right, and we are now adjourned. No, we're not adjourned. I don't have the Right, thank you, thank you. We have no in camera, no added items. Notices of motion? None. Date of next meeting is December 13th, 2023. Want to see some reindeer antlers. And now we are adjourned, so have a great day, everyone. Call for adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Mason. Everyone called for adjournment. Have a lovely day.